Важливо використовувати кожну нагоду для того, щоб розказувати правду про те, що відбувається в Україні. І правда дуже проста, що справді величезну проблему з переселенцями, з біженцями найпростіший і найголовніший спосіб її вирішити – це нарешті припинити війну, яка відбувається на сході України, і припинити російську окупацію Криму і сходу України. Тому ми використовуємо кожну нагоду для того, щоб про це розповідати. Я б дуже хотів, щоб в цьому році в Україну прийшов мир. І я дуже хотів би, щоб припинилася війна, і щоб у нас Україна відновила повний контроль над нашою територією і могла по-справжньому турбуватися далі про своїх громадян.
First of all, thank you very much for this kind introduction. We are still celebrating our Ukrainian winter holidays, and it's this part of the year where we try to rediscover the better side of ourselves, the kind part, the more humane part, and I think that perfectly fits into the topic we're going to discuss today. So thanks to everyone for your readiness to share our pain. For me it's a very personal story because my wife has a cousin whose family lives in Donetsk. Well, I should have said they used to live in Donetsk, because they had to flee Donetsk right after the war started in the region. And in July of 2014, the husband of my wife's cousin went missing in the streets of Donetsk, and we have not heard of him since then, so it's 18 months. So the family lives in Kyiv with my family, so we know what it's like from our own family story. And I think every Ukrainian could tell you something about this, about his relatives, about his friends who had to leave the place or who lost someone in this war. We keep hearing very shocking reports from what's happening in the east of the country and in Crimea. Basically, or it's obviously, many people there, they are deprived of their basic civil rights. You can be beaten up, arrested, kidnapped or killed for speaking Ukrainian, for going into Ukrainian church, or for being a Crimean Tatar. And now we also see that many people, they are deprived of very basic social rights, or very basic social things, such as education, such as good medicine, or electricity, or warmth in their houses, or food. And of course now we hear very shocking stories about people losing their lives or risking their lives. And we hear about more and more cases of murder, of rapes, of medieval styles tortures which are happening in the region. So those are the things that people are escaping from. And we should clearly understand that as long as these things will continue in the east of Ukraine and in Crimea, we'll see more and more IDPs and more refugees who have to leave the country. That's the reason for all this. Now, speaking of the scale of the crisis, or speaking of the scale of the situation, we are talking about something up to 1.6 million internally displaced persons inside of Ukraine, or more than 1 million families. And I can give you another two numbers to understand the scale of the situation. First, the biggest rescue operation we've had in our Ukrainian history was Chernobyl, and at that time, from what we know, about 60,000 families were moved from one place to another. Now we're talking about 1.6 million people. Another number, speaking of the Syrian crisis, we know that the greatest European powers have promised to give a refuge to something like 40,000 refugees. We know that Canada has been very kind and generous with promising to give a refuge to a big amount of Syrian refugees. As of the moment, I think slightly more than 10,000 people have arrived from Syria to Canada. Once again, in Ukraine, we're talking about 1.6 million people. So I think we are talking about one of the biggest issues, one of the biggest challenges of the type around the world. Now, what's being done? I think we have been witnessing a very fruitful and very touching cooperation of very different players in this field. First, the Ukrainian people, and we're talking about ordinary citizens, and the Ukrainian government, they have been doing a tremendous effort to support the IDPs. I will specifically mention the help that people get from ordinary citizens, because many Ukrainians, actually hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians, or millions of Ukrainians, they give their home to people who had to leave Donetsk or Luhansk or Crimea, or they donate money, or they donate food or clothes, and it's very touching experience, very touching situation, especially when you think about the country which is undergoing a very severe economic crisis at the same time. Second, of course, we are very grateful to our international partners, including Canada. We know that Canada has announced at least 2 projects which I would like to mention. One is worth 3 million Canadian dollars and another one is worth 17 million Canadian dollars for direct assistance to those people who have been affected by the war. We strongly appreciate this. We really would like all of you to know that it's a help which is very timely and which is very appreciated on the ground in Ukraine. And also I would like to thank to all those charities, all those volunteer organizations, all those individuals who are here and around the world have been helping the Ukrainians. I know that there are really extraordinary efforts which have been done by the Ukrainian and Canadian community. I know that UCC has been keeping this issue as one of the priorities. Canada-Ukraine Foundation, UNO, and many others. I'm afraid to miss anyone. So once again, thank you very much for everything that you have been doing to help the people in need. But in the very end, I think we should clearly understand the roots of the problem and the roots of this crisis. And I also think that this conversation is a very good opportunity to clarify it for ourselves. And so I think I will address this to everyone in the room and to the organizers in particular. I think in order to address this crisis properly, we should clearly state the reason of this crisis. And the reason is very clear. It's the war which was brought to our land by Russia, and its occupation which was done by Russia. Otherwise, I started my word with this word pain. So I think it would be very mindless to address symptoms of the disease, not addressing the actual reason of the disease. In that case, it would be just like a pain relief or painkiller. We know all that it does not actually help to treat the disease. So let's keep in mind that the key reason for all this crisis is this absolutely bizarre war, bizarre occupation which is brought to our country by the neighboring country, by Russia and by the Putin regime. And it means that all of us should find the way to stop the war. And I think if we try to think what can stop this war from continuing, how we can make Putin and his regime to withdraw from Ukraine, there are only 2 ways to do this. It's to increase economic sanctions against the Putin's regime, which means less resources to continue war in Ukraine. And second, it means to make the Ukrainian army strong enough to be capable to defend the land. We want to make sure that Putin understands that if he tries to escalate the situation in the east or in Crimea or around Crimea, it means risk of losing more and more lives on both sides. So let's keep this in mind. Once again, I think it's really important to understand this context to address the humanitarian crisis we are talking about. And once again, I'm very thankful to each of you for being here. It's probably not the most fun part of the weekend, and it's a very sad issue to discuss. So I'm really thankful for all of you, for your goodwill, for your empathy, which you have brought here, and I really hope that this event will be a good success. Thank you.